Most people know about photobiomodulation in the form of red light therapy, right? That's kind of the big marketing buzz right now. Yes, that is a form of photobiomodulation, but it's not the only form.
Hi everyone. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to take a moment to give a shout out to my amazing Supercast subscribers. Your continued support means the world to me. As a Supercast member, you get exclusive access to the unfiltered, ad-free video versions of our Health Unchained interviews. Raw, real, and packed with insights. You're not just supporting the show, you're fueling the conversations at the cutting edge of healthcare and blockchain innovation. So thank you for being a vital part of this journey. If you're interested in joining, you can learn more about Supercast in the episode description.
Hi, I'm your host, Ray Dogan, and welcome to Health Unchained. On this show, I will be speaking with healthcare entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and executives who are using blockchain technologies to revolutionize healthcare. These innovators are building the distributed infrastructure and diverse communities required for a trusted, secure, and decentralized healthcare ecosystem. Enjoy the show.
What is blockchain?
Was ist Blockchain?
What is blockchain?
The doctor will see you now.
Remember, the Health Unchained podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and we are not providing any sort of legal, financial, or medical advice. Please do your own research and due diligence before making any important decisions related to these matters. And now, please enjoy episode 129 of Health Unchained.
Welcome to Health Unchained. Today's guest is Dr. Brandon Crawford, a board-certified developmental functional neurologist and global laser expert whose focus on laser and light therapy transforms the lives of patients. He's the founder of 528 Innovations, which focuses on the laser tech, and co-founder of the technology's clinical arm, NeuroSolution. We'll be talking about how light can heal people and how decentralized technology can potentially accelerate the treatments for patients. Dr. Brandon Crawford, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Same here. Maybe we can get started a little bit about your background, from your own words, and then we kind of dive into some questions.
My background is pretty interesting. My primary licensure is in chiropractic. When I was going through my chiropractic training, I was taken under my mentor's wing, Dr. John D'Onofrio. He was the president of the Functional Neurology Board at the time, and he opened up my mind to this world of functional neurology. And functional neurology is still a young profession. 15 years ago, or gosh, that would have been closer to 18, 19 years ago, it was even younger, right? It was really just getting started. And so from the early onset, I was really entrenched and ingrained in this concept and paradigm of functional neurology. So it set my career on a different path because I've always been interested in how the brain develops, how to rewire, how to remap the brain. And from the early onset, we were always working on cases together, and we were working on a pediatric genetic brain disorder. And I remember working with Dr. D'Onofrio and thinking, how are we going to help this child? Functional neurology is great, but this is a genetic condition. I don't really know how we're going to help here. And he said, Brandon, we're going to use laser therapy and we're going to apply it to this child's brain because they've tried everything else and nothing really works. Look, back then, this wasn't a thing, right? You can find research, clinical case studies, et cetera now, but back then, this was not really being done. And so we did that, and this child's brain developed like no other child's brain develops with this condition. That moment really inspired me. It really just set me on this path that I'm currently on, where I'm bridging this functional neuroscience with photobiomodulation and creating something that's never been done before. And we're seeing things that have never been seen before.
Super interesting. Actually, for the audience, would you mind defining what photobiomodulation means and what sort of use cases there are for this?
Absolutely. So if we break down the word photobiomodulation, it simply means changing life with light. That's really the direct translation. Most people know about photobiomodulation in the form of red light therapy, right? That's kind of the big marketing buzz right now. I don't even know how many LED panels and all these things on the market. Yes, that is a form of photobiomodulation, but it's not the only form. We're using various colors of light. When you change the wavelength, right? We can make a wavelength longer or shorter. That changes the energy that we're delivering per photon to that individual. That also changes the color of light. So yes, we use a lot of red. We use a lot of infrared. I'm using green. Actually, in our regenerative medicine procedures, I've developed a procedure using green light. we use violet, right? I'm still looking at, what's the best wavelength? What's the best, all these different parameters to achieve the biological outcomes that we're trying to achieve. Again, from a simplistic model, photobiomodulation is harnessing the power of light to drive biology in a certain way to help us heal better, faster, more effectively.
So a question on that, you mentioned how you're using different colors of light. What's the difference between what you're doing in your device versus maybe just a green light bulb or something? Is it the same thing? You want to explain that difference?
So it's a concept that's not always easy to understand. I like to speak around this from the concept of a voice, right? So if I were to talk to you like this, you would not be very interested in what I have to say. I still delivered words to you, but the intonation, the cadence, all of those different parameters about that voice changed, and that changes how that information influences your neurophysiology. So in a laser beam, I can control certain parameters, just like adjusting my voice to deliver this information to the body. For example, I have settings in my laser that we've developed where I want to help someone sleep better. If I need someone to go to sleep, I'm not going to go, "Hey, it's time to go to sleep. Let's wind down. It's been a long day," right? That's not the kind of voice that I would speak to someone, right? You're not going to put your kid to sleep like that. So
Definitely not.
I want that laser beam to be a calm, soothing delivery of energy, delivery of information, so I can control certain parameters such as duty cycle, the polarization of the light, the frequency of the light, the wavelength of the light. All of these different parameters is just like adjusting your voice, right? In a light bulb or an LED panel, you're not able to control those parameters with those things. That's why I had to develop this device, because it did not exist.
Super interesting. Can you share some of the most significant breakthroughs perhaps that you've witnessed since you were inspired to actually invent this device? And how does it treat neurological conditions?
Absolutely. You can come into my office any day of the week and you can witness.
Where's your office?
Yeah,
Let's start there.
just outside of Austin, Texas. So I'm in a suburb called Cedar Park. So you can come in and see any kind of story unfolding, and that's the beautiful thing about what we're doing. We just got some national recognition from Fox News for a really cool case that we're working with and seeing phenomenal outcomes. It's a case of a little baby. She has something called lobar holoprosencephaly. This is a congenital disorder where the brain does not develop. And so little Millie was born missing roughly 90% of her brain. And the majority of kids die within the first few days of being born if they don't miscarry. She's 1 year and 7 months old at this point in time. The cool thing is that she's not just surviving, she's thriving. We've been working with her for about 1 year. She's now doing things like she's saying mom and dad, she's rolling, we're working on crawling, she's working on sitting up. Her digestion has improved greatly. In fact, I just got a message from them a couple days ago. They checked back in with their gastroenterologist and he's like, "Oh my gosh, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because I've never seen this before." That's just one example.
Amazing.
How can photobiomodulation impact the brain and the nervous system? Well, we have to understand that our brain and our bodies, we are intimately wired to be influenced by light. Most people know about the circadian rhythm, right? So light is a big part of that circadian biology, circadian rhythm story, right? Now, it doesn't stop there, because there's receptors scattered all throughout our body that are not just about seeing light. We actually receive light all over our body and deep inside of our body. But when we use laser and light therapy, number one, the big thing that I had to battle for about 5 years is, does it penetrate the skull? And the answer is, inarguably, yes, it penetrates the skull. So that took a long time just to get that discussion cleared. But research is now conclusive. Yes, it penetrates the skull. Now, when you use this on the head for the brain, you're going to see that the use of red and infrared light are going to make the cells in your brain function better. So if they need to produce a neurotransmitter, they'll do that more effectively. If they need to heal, they'll do that more effectively. Whatever they need to do, they're going to do it better when you use these forms of photobiomodulation. When I use green, that's going to help with the migration and differentiation of stem cells. So it's very regenerative in nature, and also impacts the DNA and RNA. It's really important to understand how each wavelength and how each form of light can impact our brain. The huge thing, what I like to boil it down to, is that it enhances neuroplasticity. And that's really bottom line what we're trying to achieve in our office. We're trying to leverage this concept of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to mold and change. I'm seeing people who have been told they'll never do this, they can't do this, this is their life. Well, that's just not true the majority of the time, because the brain can change. Using something like photobiomodulation just enhances that neuroplastic effect. It's an accelerator, is what I tell people.
So interesting. A couple points I want to also make, or questions really. One is, how long does it take? What's the process for the patient? Do they come in every day? Is it just a one-time therapy for like 5 minutes? Is there any sort of invasive process to it, or is it all outside the head? How does it feel like for the patient? Is it comfortable, uncomfortable?
Yeah, some people will feel it, some people will not, right? We have different procedures. Let's say we're helping someone rehab from a brain injury, or we're helping someone with a neurodevelopmental disorder like autism. We need to create neuroplasticity, and neuroplasticity depends on the frequency, intensity, and duration of stimulus. We created what we call an intensive care model, where we work with someone typically about 18 hours a week. They're coming to us Monday through Friday so that we can apply our methodology, these different types of stimulus, often enough with the right intensity and frequency so that we can actually drive neuroplasticity. What I like to tell people is think of neuroplasticity like momentum. Once we develop enough of it, you don't have to be in this intensive care model for the rest of your life, because that momentum will take over, and these brain networks inherently know how to develop. We just need to give them a push, right? So that intensive care really sparks things and gets things going. And then we also have the regenerative medicine options, and those can be done on their own, but they can also be folded into that intensive care model like I was talking about. The regenerative medicine procedures, they're things like the Song laser activated V-cell procedure. V-cell stands for very small embryonic like stem cell. This is a procedure where we draw the patient's blood, we spin it into a certain type of plasma. I have a laser specifically developed to activate these pluripotent stem cells called V cells within the plasma. And then we re-administer that plasma to the individual, and I use the laser over the area of the brain or body that I want those cells to focus and concentrate in. So it's this way to activate the cells and then have a more targeted approach towards using it. I also use things like extracellular vesicles, and I'm now looking at doing research to laser activate those extracellular vesicles. No one in the world has done this. We did a search, or at least we didn't find it. Now we're forming our own clinical studies for this. We combine several different things in those two worlds. I actually have a few other proprietary procedures that we're developing right now as well. But how does the patient feel? Leave smiling? Everyone leaves happy? I don't think they're being tortured here. They all seem to love and enjoy it.
That sounds amazing. Based on all the growth you've had with the company and the many patients that treated, it's really quite amazing. It's futuristic technology. You're using light to heal people. It's really incredible. You mentioned the goal is to increase neuroplasticity in the brain, affecting the body itself, actually, and without any drugs, without any chemicals introduced into the body directly. So I think that's important, because certain drugs claim to also create this neuroplastic sort of effect. But again, there's side effects, and research is still out on all that too. And I'm talking about psychedelic drugs as well. So what do you think about that sort of area of research? I'm just curious.
I think it's a viable place to look. I mean, look, if there's a natural remedy that was put on this planet that can help us heal, I think it's worth looking into. I think there's problems when you have to chemically alter that substance so you can patent it, so you can prescribe it. Whenever you start chemically altering it, it's going to impact how it's broken down and metabolized in the body. I'm not against medication. I'm just saying that sometimes there's other options. But as far as psychedelics go, it's very interesting. The integrative psychologist in our office, Dr. Jerry, she's trained in psychedelics and she's trained in mushrooms and things like this. So I've been able to have some interesting conversations with her. We know that certain mushrooms will actually increase neuroplasticity. We know that psychedelics can have a huge impact on neuroplasticity. What's the best use cases for them? I don't think that we have that data yet, but I think that that'll come in the future.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I'm thinking potential co-therapies with the laser lights along with the potential microdosing of some sort of substance. But again, lots of research still needs to be done, and we do not advise anyone to use these things without doing their own research too. Kind of have a general question here. Sunlight, like how much sunlight should we be getting?
You have your own inborn mechanisms that tell you when you're getting enough sun and when you're not getting enough sun and when you're getting too much sun. It's called your skin. If you're out in the sun and your skin starts to get really hot and starts to turn pink and red and starts to kind of burn, you're starting to develop that sunburn. You need to find some shade. Now, for some people, that's going to be 10 minutes. For some people, it'll be 20 minutes. For some people, they can really develop what's called a solar callus, and they can stay out in the sun for hours. A lot of that is genetically driven, but you can alter your melanin stores by getting more sun exposure. And then the cool thing is, if you actually expose yourself to red and infrared light before going into the sun, it actually helps you absorb and assimilate the UVA and UVB light from the sun so you don't actually burn as easily. That's pretty cool. Like a lot of the tanning places will use a red light bed and then put you in the tanning bed. I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying it's a thing. Sunlight is really important, and this goes back to the discussion on the circadian biology concept. We need to understand that the light entering our eyes and entering our body are charging aromatic amino acid rings in our brain, in the pharmacy in our brain. What does that mean? That means the light is setting the stage for neurotransmitter activation. And so the early morning sunlight, it's activating neurotransmitters like norepinephrine, which is your adrenaline in the brain, dopamine, things like this to get you up and get you active, get you moving, get you ready for the day, right? And then that late evening sunset, those wavelengths are getting serotonin and melatonin going, pulsing through the brain so you can sleep. So what I tell people is you at least need to be outside in the morning as the sun's rising so you catch that low angle sunlight. Midday is really important as well. It's longer wavelengths, far infrared. That's why it's hotter. Those far infrared wavelengths are hotter. Get your belly exposed because this is really good for the microbiome. So I like to go outside over a lunch break. I get 10, 15 minutes on my belly. It's really good for the microbiome. But then again, being outside as the sun sets, getting my brain ready for sleep. Now, here's what most people don't understand or they forget. They got 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes outside, sunset, great. Then they go inside and turn on the TV or sit in front of the computer or they do something like that. The light coming off of those screens is tricking the brain saying, oh, it's noon. It's the frequency of midday. That high frequency blue and white light is actually altering circadian biology. And there's studies on this. If you get too much of this, it's going to actually lead to type 2 diabetes. It's going to lead to obesity. It's going to lead to metabolic disorders. Okay, so this has been proven. You have to get your light right. You have to get that light environment right. Sunlight is essential. I believe I've made the best, laser in the world. However, it does not replace going outside and getting sun.
I appreciate that. And yeah, you mentioned how blue light can make us feel like it's midday, but we're seeing blue light all the time through our screens. I think that's important to talk about, especially these days, because it's just going to keep increasing. I don't feel like there's enough push for people to kind of turn that off. And there's, obviously it's so interesting to look at videos all day. So people are doing this because they're addicted. How are we going to get over this sort of new addiction that society has right now? Seriously.
It really is a problem. It's a problem because when you look at the school system, our kids are sitting under fluorescent lights all day long. And now they're using computers or iPads with every subject. So they're in front of a screen and they're under fluorescent lights all day. And then they go home and their homework is on the computer. So this is a problem. It's setting the stage for a metabolic meltdown, for a brain catastrophe. It really is. And you can already see it impacting society. You can see the diabetes rates going up, the obesity rates going up, mental disorders going up, et cetera. What's going on is our dopamine systems are being hijacked. That light coming in is stimulating our dopamine systems. And so when you stimulate dopamine, these are connected to our addiction networks. We're pushing the stimulus, and when we get away from it, we get a sharp decline in dopamine, and then we have to replace it. Think of someone addicted to cocaine. They do a little bit, and then they want more, and then they want more, and then they want more, because they have to keep getting that high, if you will, right? It's the same thing with the technology. We're bombarding ourselves, and then when we try to go on a weekend trip, when we try to go for a walk in the woods, etc., right? And we have a feeling of anxiety or dread or like this uneasy feeling in us. We're like, what's wrong with me? I'm trying to de-stress and I'm trying to, do something good for me. Or it's because your dopamine has plummeted and you're in withdrawal, and you have to actually be very uncomfortable for several days to actually go through that withdrawal to reset your dopamine networks. So it's the education that needs to be propagated so that we as a society can understand what this high frequency light stimulus is doing to us, but then also how we need to break away from it. Because look, technology is going to be a part of our society. It's not like it's going to go anywhere, and you have to know how to use it. But you also need to know about your neurology and how to navigate these things so you don't become so overly addicted that you cannot live a happy, healthy life without it.
Well said. No, I appreciate that. And there's so much that we're still learning about, especially for younger people, how this is affecting them. So it's very interesting to watch and hear you talk about this. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, I'm curious about the patents or patent portfolio you have around this technology. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, from a laser perspective, we just filed one of the larger patents that we have. So we created this modular system to our lasers so that as we continue to innovate and grow and change technology, someone doesn't have to reinvest in a complete new laser system, right? So that's new to the market. That's never been done before. A lot of the trade secrets that we've developed, like I was discussing how I can control the parameters of the laser. Not all of that is in the patent. Obviously, we want to protect a lot of that IP, but we did develop a specific optical system that does allow me to control things, the duty cycle, the polarization, the frequency, all of these types of things. And then we're about to be filing software patents for data collection, and that can lead into the blockchain discussions because I think it's very important to be doing this. But then also for user experience. So for someone to be able to have this laser, but then know how to safely navigate use of the laser, right? Because that's a big problem right now is people are like, laser beam, I don't know what to do with this thing. Well, there's some very safe applications that I've developed over the course of my career that we're actually using the software to help guide that use. So the patent experience has been ongoing, and it's very interesting because it's this fine line of what can we disclose and what do we not want to disclose, right? So it's been fun.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And you said the B word, so we're going to get into it, blockchain. And I know you're not a blockchain expert. Obviously, you're focused on the neuroscience of what's going on here with the light photobiomodulation stuff. But I kind of want to talk about how you said now that you're going to be developing the software and there's going to be patient data involved. Can you kind of talk to me about how you think blockchain might be able to enhance some of the data security and patient privacy in this field?
Yes. So the concepts of blockchain are very important for healthcare providers to understand. We need to understand that we live in a world where patients are not just reactive in healthcare, but they're being proactive. They're actually trying to get involved. They're active participants. That's what I'm trying to say. So patients are now active participants in healthcare, as they should be. It's very important that we understand that all of these metrics that we're collecting from our perspective as clinicians needs to be shared securely with our patients so they can have this information available for other providers, but then also they can share this with their family members, right? Because this is very important to understand, like congenital disorders. Sometimes these gene mutations may take a few years to show up in the family lineage. So if there's some type of pool of data that a family can have access to and share within themselves, that's important too. But it's the security concepts of blockchain that's important to understand because right now in America we have HIPAA, right? These are the laws that guide how to keep patient data safe and inaccessible. I can put as many security measures in place and we're HIPAA compliant to the nth degree. but it's still not as safe and secure as the blockchain network. It's just not. It never will be, right? If someone really wanted this information in my office or anyone else's office, they can get it, okay? I mean, let's just be honest. So from a security standpoint, I mean, we're talking about the most intimate details of one's life. I mean, really, this is it, right? So we need a system that is safe and secure, but then easily accessible for those that need it. And blockchain has those answers. And this can be life-changing. For example, I travel the world a lot. I just got back from Brazil. I was literally thinking about this topic, right? So I'm going into this country that may not have the best health care, right? So what if I had an emergency and I was rushed to the emergency room there? What if I had something like a clotting disorder and I needed a very specific type of medication so that I didn't bleed out? Well, if I had this information in a digital wallet, right, on blockchain,
Exactly.
and when I got to the ER and I'm sitting here like dying and I just go boom, and my data was transferred, my life would be saved, okay? Rather than, having to rely on these janky systems that are never going to connect, right? I'm going through this right now in our Dubai office because the UAE government, they require that their healthcare people have to design your EMR systems. So I can't use anything from the US. I can't use anything that I've used in the past. They literally have to design this for their country. And let me tell you, it's horrendous. I'll just be on record right now. It's horrendous. Like, I'm trying to navigate this EMR system. It's absurd. There's no way that I could quickly access the data that I need. That's not going to transfer anywhere. So
Right.
We're not working in a system that's collaborative in nature. We're not working in a system that's secure. And blockchain just has so many answers for these problems.
Totally agree with you. You're definitely on point. I feel like it's a matter of time. I think once people understand the benefits here and can appreciate how much risk we're putting into our EMRs currently, it's ridiculous. So I'm definitely with you there. And thank you for saying that. I think it's really nice that a person like you is able to explain to people why this is important. I'm also curious about some of the other risks that you think can be avoided, not just with blockchain, but some of the other risks with your device itself. What are people saying in terms of any negative effects as well? Because I think we want to talk about both sides. The positive sounds great, a lot of benefits, it's very clear. But what are some of the things you try to do in order to avoid or mitigate some of the maybe physical or mental risks involved?
Meaning by adopting blockchain and use of laser therapy?
Actually, more on the side of the clinical effects.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Not blockchain.
Yes.
Sorry for jumping back
No,
and
no,
forth.
no. So when it comes to laser therapy, people hear laser and think, oh my gosh, this thing's going to burn straight through my head. There is a dosage concept, right? There's something called hormesis, also called the biphasic dose response curve. But this applies to anything and everything. It applies to medication, it applies to exercise, it applies to supplementation. It's the concept that too little of something, you don't get a response. You have a dose that's just right for you, and then you have a dose that can be deleterious for your health. This applies to everything. It also applies to photobiomodulation. My intellectual property personally revolves around this concept where the research is good, but most of the research is done in vitro, meaning cells in a petri dish. And then when you look at the animal models or human clinicals, it's still good, it's good research, but it's still those systems at rest. We're not activating systems like in rehab or therapy, or we're not trying to change systems and apply photobiomodulation. And why that matters is because the fuel in a neuron changes when you start to activate it. Just like a car. If you turn a car on and you just let it idle, it's going to take a long time to run out of gas. But if you sit there and you hammer on the gas pedal, you're going to run out of gas quickly. So if I'm trying to change a brain, I'm changing the fuel demand on those neurons. Therefore, I need a higher dosage of photobiomodulation for that patient at that point in time. So these are the concepts that I'm folding into how to use our laser. And number one is I developed a laser that has a high power, but because of our optical system, we've actually taken that class 4 laser power and translated it into a class 3R safety. This has never been done before. So that means I can deliver a lot of photons, but in a very, very safe way. This was essential because if we didn't do this, it would be too much power. People could hurt themselves, or clinicians would hurt people, because it's a very powerful laser. So this was very important, and we figured it out. It took a year, but we did that. So we created that optical system. So this is a very safe laser. Within that software, you'll be guided on how to use a laser, where to put it, for how long, all of these different things, right? Now, I'm not saying it replaces consulting with a doctor or anything like that. It doesn't. But as far as general use guidelines, I've built that into the software so that we can mitigate that. Because you're right. The number one question is, great, this is a fantastic laser. How do I use it? How do I not hurt myself? These are the questions that we're coming up against. And this is exactly why we developed the software around it.
Thanks for that answer. Thanks for all these answers. It's really been amazing so far. And I still have a few questions left. So I'm going to ask you, looking forward, thinking like 5 to 10 years, what really excites you most about the intersection of neuroscience, technology, innovation, and where do you see the greatest opportunities for future development?
It's a big question because I think I have a multifaceted answer. What I'm looking at right now is the combination of how light impacts our regenerative biologics. And that's anything from stem cells to extracellular vesicles, et cetera, because we can activate and change how these cells interact with our body and with the diseased tissues by activating these things with light before and after administration. I think this is huge. I have a couple of different studies that we are working on funding right now. We've gotten through the basic sciences already, so we know the basic premises of how these things work. And that excites me to no end because this is going to be huge. Targeted, precision, regenerative medicine is on the horizon. Now, when we talk about the use of things like blockchain and AI, really being able to culminate all of this data that we're collecting from ourselves. I'm wearing a Whoop. I've got all these different wearables that I have, right? If we're able to take that information, store it on a blockchain, use AI to then program some type of biofeedback system, and I can literally be performing biofeedback on myself and sending that information to my doctor real time, these types of things are on the horizon as well. So I think that there's so many opportunities right now, and there is research going on in this realm, and there's people like me that are thinking about these things. I have other ideas floating through my head right now. Actually, I just got on the phone this morning and had a harebrained idea that I want to start working through. But now we're getting to the point in science where we can start making these things actually happen.
It is amazing. And one thing that we've talked about before recording was quantum computing and how that can really revolutionize the way we can take all this massive data sets and really gain some insights that can help us on a personal level. AI is doing that, but AI has limitations. But with quantum computing, you can kind of see a whole new world.
Yes. Yeah, quantum computing, I think, is going to leapfrog things like blockchain, but I think it's a while out. To really understand things like superimposition and then what Einstein defined as spooky action at a distance. Yes, that's literally what he called it, spooky action at a distance. If we can take those core concepts and implement them into healthcare, that is a very interesting conversation. I think it's possible because right now, we know that the financial industry is using quantum computing and they're using these quantum principles to send and receive funds at a secure level, right? So it's been tapped into, and there's people looking at this, more intelligent people than I am. But I truly think that is out there, and it's on the horizon, but it's further down the road.
Another concept that comes to mind is the brain as a quantum computer itself. You have all these synapses sending information at light speed. Essentially, it's working as a quantum sort of device, potentially. I'm not quantum physicist myself, but what are your thoughts around that?
The brain is definitely the ultimate quantum computer, and it's actually sending signals faster than the speed of light. And that actually gets into the concept of what Einstein defined as spooky action at a distance, where if you know, and that's a very quantum physics discussion where you have up quarks and down quarks. And if you know the spin of an up quark, you automatically know the spin of the down quark. And that's how you can have this superimposed data sets. But yes, the brain is absolutely the ultimate quantum computer. Now we're really getting into a discussion about consciousness and what is consciousness and where is consciousness held, because it's the idea that this consciousness is held between our ears, but it's absolutely not. There's really good research out there that proves that consciousness goes beyond the space in our skull. It's more like our brain is a quantum receiver and transmitter. That's what is being discussed right now.
I love that. Right now I have goosebumps. My hairs on my arms are just standing up. I think that's the truth. I think we have a lot of way to go to kind of prove that. I think proving that is super challenging.
It is.
But I think that concept resonates with me on just a natural level, I feel like. So I think that's something that people kind of eventually learn over their lifetime, but it's something that's hard to prove, which has really been the issue for people to agree on this. So that's really cool. Super interesting. And I think we have to have another discussion on consciousness in another episode. That'd be really amazing. What advice would you offer healthcare providers or entrepreneurs who are interested in adopting these sort of emerging technologies, such as blockchain or what you're building, into their practices or business?
I really think that providers of all types need to get back to the roots of why they're doing what they're doing. Because if you step into a hospital or to a busy private office, you'll see that the majority of the day is spent around data entry and charting and all of these things. And it's really important. I'm not saying that's not important, but it's a part of the system that takes away from patient care. We need to better understand or get back to the roots of why we became healthcare providers to begin with, and that's to help people. And if we can leverage technologies like this in a safe way and let us do what we're good at. I'm really good at being a clinician. I'm shit at being a data entry person. That's not my forte. That's not what I need to be doing. So if I can have some type of assistive technology or something like that can organize it, store it, send it, receive it, all of these things, that helps me help people. I don't think the clinician is going to be replaced by a robot. I just don't think that you can replace that human element, because the human element is so vitally important here. You have to hear the intonation, you have to see the pain that these people are going through to really understand what is the proper diagnosis and what path do we need to get these people on for healing. So I don't think that's replaceable, but all of this other stuff is. And so we need to understand that. And then we need to understand that our systems right now truly are not secure, and they're janky, for lack of better words. So why not be looking into these better options? I think it's the only option, really.
What do you think are some of the biggest barriers to blockchain adoption in healthcare specifically?
It's the concept of education. It's just not understanding it. It's a new frontier. Anytime you start talking to a doctor about a different EMR system, eyes glaze over, eyes roll back. They say, no, I just got able to use this. I'm not going through that again. It's the concept of not really fully understanding it. It is a pain in the butt to implement a whole new system, to be honest. It's a huge challenge. So really, it's just understanding that the process can be streamlined, that the process can, it has huge rewards and has a huge upside. But yeah, it's really just lack of understanding and education.
Yeah, I would also add that maybe the economic impact of blockchain might still be misunderstood, and I think the financial sector needs to understand it and adopt it in a way that's scalable before we can get into other industries like healthcare. That being said, we don't really know how technology evolves, so we're all here for the ride.
Absolutely.
One topic I want to cover briefly is this idea of balancing between regulatory compliance with the FDA or other institutions and technology innovation. I mean, we're seeing a lot of FDA being slowed down by some cuts and things like that.
Yeah.
More recently, what are some of your thoughts around this?
Yeah, so actually, we were impacted by some of the FDA layoffs as well. The team that was working on some of our documentation actually was laid off, and so that put us back a few months with receiving, I think it was a 510K that we had filed for. Regulatory statutes are necessary, but they need to be in place for the right reasons. They need to be in place to protect the people, right? That's why we need regulatory, statutes in place. But I think what's going on is that this has really just become a jumbled up mess, and they're more concerned about checking off boxes, to give you your whatever it is that you're seeking. So I think that there's a lot of things that need to be changed from a compliance standpoint, and it needs to get back to the core focus of protecting people, because I don't think that that's really what's going on right now. And I literally just spent a whole day in Brazilian customs because they pulled my lasers when I traveled there. Literally all day. Started at like 7 in the morning, and I wasn't able to fly out until 10 p.m. that night. It was around the idea that they wanted tariffs. They just wanted their money for me going to teach a medical conference. I was just going to teach. That's all I did. And I had some devices with me. But they just wanted their fees. These agencies can be quite aggressive. At the end of the day, they were very apologetic and understood that I was just going there to help their country, which I was. I was going to teach their healthcare providers. So at the end of the day, I was thankful that they released the lasers back to me. But it let me see the underbelly of that process. But, our company, we're navigating FDA compliance. We're getting our CE marks for Europe. We're navigating the TGA for Australia. We're navigating ANVISA in Brazil. So we're definitely doing this right now. So it's a big topic for us.
One of the benefits we talk about with blockchain is this idea of borderlessness, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the idea of nation states is also quite interesting. And right now we're seeing a lot of geopolitical issues. It's hard to predict the next few years, to be honest. But I do think blockchain will play an important role for society.
It will, but my concern is there's so much money being made by these entities in all these different countries. I think that can create a hold on implementation.
I agree. There's definitely going to be people kind of holding people back from pursuing this technology. But, that's not going to last forever either. So it'll just be a generational thing, perhaps. We'll see. Yeah. Brandon, thank you so much for your time. Final question here is basically a simple one. What's your favorite book or most influential book that you've read that you'd like to share?
That's a good question, man. I'm an avid reader. Okay. Tell you what, I'll just go to my Kindle and pull up what I was just reading on the plane. We've been talking about quantum physics a lot. There's a book called Life on the Edge. That one's fantastic. That really gets to, you really start to understand some of these quantum principles. I was actually reading a book by Gerald Pollack called The Fourth Phase of Water. I've read it before. I was rereading it. And that one is fascinating because part of the development of the laser, I developed a specific wavelength that improves our ability to make cellular water. It's called exclusion zone water. I chose a certain wavelength just for that. Like I said, I've read that book before, but I was rereading it on the plane. But that's a really good one to understand our cellular health and how important that is. So those are two. I know you asked for one, but those are two good ones.
No, that's perfect. I appreciate that. And it sounds really interesting. I'll make sure to include those in the show notes for others to check out as well. Dr. Brandon Crawford, what's the best way for people to actually reach you and your team to learn more, maybe get involved? Maybe there's somebody in their family that could benefit from this treatment.
I always like to refer people to our Instagram page because I love people to see the patient stories coming out of our office. And so my Instagram is bcrawforddc. So that's B as in boy, Crawford, D as in dog, C as in cat. But you can check out my clinical website, which is neurosolutionatx.com. You can also go to my personal brand website and you can see all my different projects. So that's drbrandoncrawford.com. And of course, the laser website is 528innovations.com.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to include all those links in the show notes. Check them out if you're interested. And I'm sure you are after this discussion. It was so insightful. Learned so much today. So thank you so much. We hope today's conversation inspired you to think critically about the future of health innovation and the role we can all play in building systems that prioritize trust, transparency, and efficiency. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review to help us reach more listeners passionate about revolutionizing healthcare. Until next time, stay healthy, stay innovative, and keep your mind and ideas unchained. Thank you, Dr. Crawford.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, we would greatly appreciate it if you can take a moment to share your thoughts about the show by writing a review and rating the show on your podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach a wider audience and enhance the overall quality of the show. Don't forget to encourage your friends, mentors, teams, and students to tune in and subscribe as well. Thank you for your support. Check out healthunchained.org and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you enjoy podcasts. Join the premium Health Unchained Supercast community by going to healthunchained.supercast.com, which gets you access to ad-free episodes, and join the official Telegram community group for the latest updates.